Hello and welcome to I'll Knit If I Want To, where I do my best to answer some of your questions. I am gonna jump right in. So, first question this week is, are you a monogamous knitter? I'm not. Or have multiple projects going at once? I do. And what is your process for writing a pattern? Meaning, do you just cast on, see where an idea takes you, and make notes as you go, write it after? Do you write it out and then knit from your pattern to see if it works? Some combination, something else entirely? Relatedly, do you keep a notebook or something similar for pattern ideas? Do you have a backlog of a gazillion pattern ideas, or is it more of a one at a time monogamous thing? So I do have... This is the notebook I always use. I have a million of these. They are Behance and they're dot grid. I really like this one because it's heavyweight pages, so my ink doesn't go through it. I actually just started a new one. Oops, paper's falling out of it. And yeah, I have all kinds of this, like working out math for grading, lots of pages that look like this, yoke percentages and whatnot. So yes, I do a lot in here. I will do quick sketch ideas and try not to forget. I actually should go back through all of my notebooks because I know I have ideas that I forget to return to. Sometimes I'll also do that in my phone in the notes. I'll like finger sketch really bad sketches of ideas, like when I'm walking around town or something. I'm like, oh, an idea. But these are my favorite. I generally, in here, I always write the yarn I'm using, the needles I'm using, the gauge I get, because I will forget, like needles, I will forget every time. So I always try to take really good notes with that. When I first started, I would actually tote around my laptop and have that open, and I would type like line by line because I was so afraid of forgetting what I had done or not saying it right. Now this is kind of all I need till I'm ready to sit down and write the pattern. Just with notes and reading the project, I know what I did, but it didn't start out that way. And I do not write the pattern first and then follow my own pattern. There are definitely designers who do that. They'll write the whole thing and then follow it. I just don't work that way. I always have to figure things out as I go, and my ideas tend to change as I go. So a lot of times that first sketch I do and what I think I want to do, especially if I'm doing shawls, will morph over time. There's a lot of times I have multiple restarts to a pattern, so it'll be like, whatever the name is, let's say it was the shift, it'd be like the shift take 1, the shift take 2, because a lot of times, especially in the beginning, I'll tear out and tweak it and make it better. So yeah, basically I usually have an idea. It might come from the yarn itself. I do feel like yarn kind of knows what it wants to be. Sorry, I've got a little glare on my glasses. But sometimes it's the idea and then I find the perfect yarn. It kind of can go either way for me. And yeah, I'll do a little bit of a rough sketch. You know, it kind of depends on what the pattern's going to be, what style it's going to be. If it's a shape, whether it be a shawl or a sweater or socks that I've done before, I don't have to do as much pre-planning because I kind of have an idea in my head of what I like and how I want to get it started. And then all the details kind of come in as I go. But yeah, I definitely design on the needles and take good notes, and then at the end I sit down and I make myself write it up. So I am not a computer person, hence this really low-tech weekly vlog, I guess it is. From the time I started working, I realized very, very quickly that I am not a computer person. I don't like sitting at a desk. It's hard for me. I had one summer job where I worked in an office and I fell asleep at my desk. I realized right then, I was like, oh, that is not the life for me. So from there, I always worked at like restaurants and things where I was on my feet moving around. Obviously knitting's a little more sedentary, but I'm still active. doing things with my hands. Like, I'm very tactile. So for me, the day I have to write the pattern, I have to kind of like amp myself up for it. Like, cause I know it's going to be a day of sitting at a computer. Thankfully it's gotten easier over the years. It doesn't take me as long each time, but it's always a day with lots of coffee and trying to keep myself focused. So yeah, then I write it. Did I answer all the little questions in there? And I will say sometimes with like a shawl or even like a yoke, I might cast on and kind of see where it takes me. But that process definitely always involves a lot more tearing out, which can be fine, but it kind of depends on how I'm feeling, if I want to go that route or if I want to kind of figure it out more solidly before I get going. Yeah, okay, I think I got them all. In regards to the multiple projects, I typically have a sweater, a pair of socks, and maybe some kind of other accessory, whether it be a shawl or typically it's kind of like a shawl, maybe a cowl, something like that. But I always like to have like a big project and a little project, literally in size. So a sweater that like, you know, I'm really getting into all those stitches, or a big shawl. And then I like to have something that's more portable, like a pair of socks or a hat. And I also like to balance myself out with a project that is maybe a little easier, that I can just knit, and then a project that is a little more demanding of my attention, a little more engaging. So I'm always looking for that balance. All right, question number 2. What do you do with everything you knit? With time, you must have so much stuff. Do you keep and wear it all, or do you sell it or give it away? So as of right now, I still have, I think, almost everything I've designed. When I was designing, my mom probably has, and my sisters, like they have a lot of my old hats. And my mom has a lot of my sweaters. Pretty much all my sweaters that I didn't design myself, my mom has. And she's great. She's very knit worthy. She wears them a lot. As far as the things I've designed, I'm looking behind me because there's like this bin here that's full of smaller like hats, cowls, socks, things like that. And then on the rack, you can kind of see over here, those are shawls, and then below it is sweaters. And actually I'm gonna talk more about this. I think another one of my questions is about storing knits, but I do keep them. I especially was keeping them because I used to travel and teach every single month, and I would always bring a bunch of my samples so people can see them, try them on, look at them, really get a feel for what they are in real life instead of just from a photo. And then I also use them as a guide when I'm teaching, especially brioche. I like having a lot of samples so that people can really understand brioche fabric. I don't know how much I'm going to be doing that in the future, so I actually have been thinking about some of my older designs that maybe I'm not wearing as much. I do wear all my knits. I absolutely, if I'm knitting something, I'm knitting it because I want to wear it, and I wear knits all the time. That is a regular part of my wardrobe all year round. But there are a couple things that maybe they don't fit me the same way anymore, or there's a reason they're just not getting as much action, and I'm kind of deciding what to do with those right now. I actually just gave one of my most loved pieces to my best friend last year. I think it was last year. For her birthday, she always really loved my Brioche Delicious shawl, and I wanted to knit her one, and I'm like halfway through, but I just, with my schedule, like could not get it done. And so finally, I don't think it was her birthday. I think I did it as a random surprise. It might have actually been on my birthday, and I went to see her. I was like, surprise, you get presents. But yeah, so I ended up giving her the original. So I probably need to knit myself a new one, or finish the one I started for her. But yeah, otherwise I pretty much have all my samples. And I don't know, they're kind of like my little babies. So All right. I am notorious for starting a knit project and then either getting busy and setting it aside or moving on to another project before I finish the first one. I usually try to keep my notes and the pattern with the project, but if they get separated, I sometimes can't figure out where I am. I don't want to frog it just because I can't find where I am. What are your tips for finding your place in a pattern if you haven't picked it up in a while? Also curious what your project bags or bins you use for bigger projects like a sweater. Thank you. Okay, so one thing I would do so that, to me, I would just make it super easy on yourself. Like if you know this is a tendency to set things aside and then you're like, where was I? The only way to get really good at telling where you're at in a pattern is to constantly try and do it. And the more you do it, the easier it becomes to read your stitches. So it's one of those things like practice is how you figure it out. But I also am all about making life easier on myself. I don't trust myself. I am trying to not say this anymore because I feel like it's a self-perpetuating thing. But I have a really bad memory, like real bad. It's an issue. I think part of that is my Hashimoto's, and part of it's just unfortunately luck of the draw. I don't have a great memory, but so because of that, and now I'm gonna be like, I have a great memory. I'm trying to get myself to believe like, no, my recall's awesome. But because of this, I do a few things. For one, I've shown these before, but I have a bunch of little row counters. I keep my project separated by project bag, and your project bag can be anything. It doesn't have to be anything fancy, but I do keep them separated by a bag. And in there, I always keep a row counter and then I like these ones again. This is the Cocoa Knits one. I also like the red clover ones. Mine are downstairs because my kids also love those ones and like to play with them. But I like these ones because they have a lock. And so you lock that, leave that in your bag, then you can pull this out and it tells you the row you were on your pattern. So I highly recommend doing that. I also am a big fan, I was just looking for my phone, recording with my phone. I'm also a huge fan of the Notes app. So I put everything that I don't think I will remember in there. And so I like that you can search them. So I would just put the name and then put like any note you need, but specifically where you are would be great. And then when you come back to that project, you can just search the name of that pattern that pops up and it's like, you are on row, blah, blah, blah. And it's right there. Otherwise, I think another great way to do that is if you store your patterns electronically, you usually can add highlights and notes. So I would just highlight the row you left off on. And I would just start trying to make that part of your practice with your knitting. But again, I also think it's wonderful to be able to read your knitting. Another great way to learn how to read your knitting is to make mistakes and have to back out. And when we are undoing our knitting and dropping down and all these things, like those mistakes are actually what teach us what's really happening in that fabric. And then it becomes a lot easier to read your work. So don't be afraid of mistakes and don't be afraid of undoing your work. If it does make you nervous, I highly recommend using a Lifeline. I can't remember if I've done my Lifeline spiel before, so I'm going to do it super quickly. But a Lifeline is basically just using a thread of some sort. It can be, I like to use like a sock yarn that's bright and smooth. Smooth is key. You don't want to put anything rough as your Lifeline. And all you do is you take that length of string or yarn. Embroidery thread's another great one. And you feed it through the live stitches on your needle, and then you just leave a tail hanging out of each end, and then you continue on your way. And what that does is if you made a mistake, you can now pull out your needle and just tear down, and nothing can drop below that barrier of the Lifeline, and then you just thread your needle back through along that string. The nice thing about this is it's a safety net, so now you can worry-free try to figure out your mistake. You can dig in there, you can drop down, and if you really muck it up and like it's unsalvageable, then you tear down to your Lifeline, but you can try to fix it first. My favorite way to place a Lifeline is if you have interchangeable needles. A lot of them have a Lifeline hole. It's that little tiny hole by the needle tip, and you can feed like your embroidery thread through there, and then you just work your row per the directions, and it places it for you. It drags it through all your stitches for you. The only thing to remember with that method is that it will also go through your stitch markers, but this is actually a great thing because then on the next row you can just place new ones, because if you do have to drop down, now your stitch markers are already in place for you that you left below. If you don't end up needing to drop down, once you pull out that Lifeline, your stitch markers will fall out. If you don't have interchangeable needles with a Lifeline hole, you can just simply thread your Lifeline thread onto a tapestry needle and just pull it through your stitches that way. I still recommend in your pattern writing where you placed your Lifeline, because again, otherwise you're just left guessing, where was I in my pattern at this point? So I just think make life easier on yourself and write some notes. There was another part of the question. Also curious what project bags or bins you use for bigger projects. So I brought over a little collection because again, I leave all my projects in their bags until completion. So for bigger ones, I have a couple favorites that I always use. So this is Buku's bag. It's just like a bucket bag. It's got some pockets, which I love. I also like that it has a long strap. So I like this one because it's like a purse. I think it looks really nice to carry it around, but that's one of my all-time favorites. And then I also love, sorry, I'm going to quickly write myself a note so I can link these for you too. Okay, I also love Hide and Hammer. So this is the Hide and Hammer bag, and I have a couple of hers. She's in the UK, and her bags are super, this canvas is really nice and heavy, and it's deep, so you could, it's a roll top bag, so you can kind of roll it to whatever your project fills up. So this can absolutely fit a sweater or a shawl, like a big shawl. And this one is my favorite because she hammered in for me. I don't know if you can see that. Drea Renee Knits for the love. So, and that's its little carry handle. And then this buckle goes over the top to secure the roll top. So that's another fave. And then they're gone, but Fringe Supplies, what was this called? The town bag. I also, it's really big. So this is actually a shawl that didn't work out in here that I need to tear out. But that is a big one too. But unfortunately, maybe you can get that from somebody who doesn't want theirs anymore, if anybody's reselling something like that. But those are kind of like the big bags I use. I'm looking over it. I have a whole, I have hooks with all my bags over there. And I was just looking to see if I forgot any. Oh, there actually is one more. Oh geez, I'm gonna forget the name. See that whole name recall thing? Are the names on here? They're not gonna be. So I have a selection of these ones. She's in Maine. I'm gonna think of it and I'm gonna link it. Here's a tag. Matterroot, Maine. I can't believe I just forgot that. So I love these ones too. These are also little roll top. And I like to travel with these ones because they have this great little clip, and I will just clip it to like my luggage handle or onto my backpack. So these are great too, and they come in all different sizes. This is the medium. I've got a large one, and she also has little ones, which I love for traveling because I will just put that on my backpack, like even right here. And they're great for small projects like socks or hats. Okay, I'm a chatty Cathy today. Let's keep going. All right, how do you knit and walk? I heard you say this in an IG live. It sounds like an amazing combination of activities. It is an amazing combination of activities. So part of it is having a good bag to knit and walk with, because you want to be able to easily hold your project and have the yarn feeding out of the bag. So again, there's that really small version I have of this, the Matterroot Maine. But my favorite is actually, again, the Buku ones. So this, I was so excited to finally snag. These are her quilted ones. They go so fast because they are so beautiful. I also have a plain one of these. It's just like all kind of this color, but these are really little. They look big next to my tiny head, but they are little, and they have a long strap, and it's perfect like hip length. And oh, I don't have a project in here right now. It's on the floor next to me. So I love that. So I'll just hold it, and then my yarn ball will be in here while I walk it. It doesn't get in my way. I also really like, this is the Ritual Dyes fanny pack, and this is actually made for such things. So you can zip up your project in here, but you can feed it through this pocket, actually goes to the inside. And so your yarn can come out of here. This I definitely think works best with small projects like a sock. If you overstuff this, it's hard to get the yarn to feed smoothly. But this is a great one too. And I either wear it around my waist, or I also, per my friend Kate Berge, I like to wear it like this and then pull from here. So yeah, that's the first tip, having a good little bag to walk around with. The other tip is small projects. If I will walk and work on like a sweater or something like that, but the heavier they are, the more it's gonna pull on your needles, and it's just not as comfortable, and it's gonna slow your roll. You're not gonna be able to like walk very quickly if that's your goal. So that's what I usually have a pair of my DRK Everyday socks on the needles for, so that I have that pattern pretty well memorized. It's really little and portable, and yeah, I can just you can start practicing just by like listening to a book or watching a show, so that you're not just looking down at your knitting, because that's kind of key, is to get comfortable knitting by feel. And if you trust yourself, you can knit by feel. Like your hands, especially if you've been knitting for a while, they really know what they're doing. So you just kind of have to trust them. A great place to start would be either garter stitch or stockinette stitch, so that it's just that same motion again and again. But yeah, again, it's that kind of practicing thing, but I love to do that. All right. How do you store your yarn and hand knit items? I've always displayed my yarn on shelves, but have heard horror stories about moths destroying other knitter stashes. I'm most curious about the best way to store my hand knit sweaters and shawls. Should I be worried about pests, or is it just to put them in the closet next to my other clothing? Or is it just fine to put them in the closet? So I will not pretend to be an expert at this, because I'm not. But one thing I do know for sure is a lot of time moths, what they're actually going for is, from what I've been told, it's once we have worn that clothing, sweat and skin cells and things that shed into that item, that's what is drawing those moths in, and what makes them want to kind of go for that particular sweater, or whatever the item may be. So one thing I've heard is to definitely make sure you're always washing your hand knits before you store them. So that's a big one. Also, they're more drawn to certain fibers than others. They really love cashmere. They have very expensive taste. Okay, my phone just thought I wanted to chat with Siri and stopped that video, so I'm gonna attempt to keep going and see if I can't bring these together. This is the kind of techie stuff that I just don't know. But I would definitely take special care with any items that do have cashmere blended into that yarn in any way. But you know, there's all kinds of things. Some people say sachets of lavender or sachets of lavender. You know, the old mothballs, but I think those are pretty chemically like, ugh. So basically what I do is I have plastic bins from Remove, and all the yarn or items I know, hey, I'm not gonna wear this anytime soon, I'm not gonna knit with this anytime soon. I had these old like 2-gallon Ziploc bags, and I would put skeins in there, or clean washed knits, and get all the air out and seal them up, and then they're in bins. And I actually keep them. I'm on the top floor of my home, and there's a couple little rooms. You can kind of see a door over here. Boop. That it gets real hot back there. So heat kills the moths and their eggs. So I just kind of let them bake in there. But I don't know if I'm doing the right thing. I don't know. I wish I could be more help. I have heard horror stories too. One thing I would take a lot of care of is if you have old rugs in your home, because that's most of the really like stories I've heard is people picking up old rugs, and there's all kinds of friends under there. We do have some very old rugs in our home, but thankfully, knock on wood, they've all been okay. But yeah, I think keeping things clean, cleaning your knits before you store them. You could always try a cedar chest, but for everything I've heard that works, I've heard somebody else say it doesn't work. So that's why I'm hesitant to give too much advice. But I think just doing the best you can to kind of keep things and move things around. I think that's part of it too. You don't really want to just leave things sitting for a super long time. Like if you're wearing those knits a lot, that's great. If you're not going to touch them all summer, maybe wash them all and then put them in some sealed up bins. Okay. So I have one more question here that I wanted to touch on. It's not really a bonus question. This is just a solid question. I've been trying to do a bonus question at the end, but this one's just more of a solid one. So when I knit a sweater with the intended amount of ease, I often find that the front fits me well and the back is way too loose. I'm a plus size and an apple shape. I carry most of my weight in the front. Do you have any tips for adjusting sweater patterns to fit me better? Again, I will not pretend to be an expert on this. It's something I'm always trying to learn more about and work on because we all are shaped so differently, and trying to get one sweater to fit all these different little amazing unique qualities we have about our bodies is an ongoing thing to learn about for me. But the first thing that comes to my mind for this is moving where your sleeves are. And in that case, you might then even need to go down a size, because it sounds to me like if the front fits perfectly and you've got extra fabric in the back, that tells me that in general, though, that circumference is too big for you. And so what I would consider doing is looking at the sizes below and measuring your full bust and probably your upper bust too. Most knitting patterns don't really include the upper bust measurement. So let's focus on full bust. And I would look at that measurement and where you want, how much ease you do or don't want, and kind of looking for that. And then once you choose that size, going down one or two, I would then, most sweaters, even if they have like a yoke or something like that, it shouldn't be too hard to move where those sleeves are towards your back, to use up more of the back fabric than the front fabric. So that, because if you just went down a size, then the front might be too small while the back starts to fit. So that's why I would just leave more stitches in the front than the back, to kind of help offset that. And because I'm not an expert in this, I then wanted to recommend a couple books. So there's Little Red in the City. This is by Isolde. She, I'm not sure if you can still get hard copies. You'll have to look, but I'm pretty sure digital for sure you can get. And this book was really written for getting sweaters to fit you perfectly. So there's like bust darts and all kinds of cool things in here that I think could be really helpful, because at the end of the day, patterns are only ever going to fit our unique bodies so well. And the more comfortable we can get with making those little modifications, because making your own clothes, half the point of it, besides the fact that it's fun and all these things, is to get garments that fit our bodies the way they should, because that's in our control. You're creating the fabric. So, and then I've mentioned her before, but Amy Herzog, I mean, from what I saw, but I feel like her career has really been about sweaters that fit. So all of her books. So I will, in the show notes below, I'll definitely write those titles down for you and their names. But I think finding a couple great books like that you can turn to figure out what tweaks to make to really work for your body shape. And then I would even consider starting with some really clean basic patterns that are a little more simple without a ton of patterning. So maybe don't jump in with like a cabled or a lace project or tons of color work. Again, I think a yoke is fine because most sweaters that color work's gonna end before the sleeve separation, so you have plenty of time to adjust. You know, a lot of times it's gonna be on an even round where there's no color work happening, that separation's gonna happen. So just adjusting where the stitches are shouldn't even be an issue or complicated to figure out. But you might really benefit from having some bust darts and some different things like that to help get like your perfect fit, because you deserve that, and we should all be making clothes that make us feel super awesome. All right. I think that's it. Oh, I almost completely forgot. There's a knit along. So right now there is the DRK Adorn Yourself knit along. I have had loads of people asking me to do an accessories knit along. So this is just small accessories, hats. This is the Chevy hat. Cowls. This is the Shift cowl. Mitts and mittens and socks. We're not doing shawls because we just did a 3-month shawl knit along, and a shawl is really a big, it kind of ends up being the same amount of work as a sweater. So this is just accessories, and it's already going. It's going to go for 2 months. I will link to it. The forum is in my Ravelry group, and then you can also partake on just Instagram or Instagram as well. There's a hashtag. So I'll put that information below, but we're going to do it through August 17th. And there's some great prizes. And yeah, you're welcome to use any DRK accessory pattern. If you're a newsletter subscriber, hopefully you saw your email yesterday because there was a nice little discount to buy some accessory patterns. If you're not a newsletter subscriber, you should be. You can find that link below as well. Again, I do get some questions from people saying like, I can't find these links. So right below this video, you're gonna see like a show description, like a caption, and it says show more. Click that show more, because it's also, I've been getting some repeat questions that I've already covered in past episodes. So if you have a question, there's a good chance I may have answered it. You can go back to all the previous episodes, which are I put all these videos into one playlist. So you can go through the playlist, and if you hit that show more, you'll always see all the questions I've answered listed there. So you can check out if there's a burning question you want to see if I've already done. That's the place to find it. I also always link to where you can ask a question below. So definitely hit that show more, because it probably has information you want. So yeah, okay, that's it. Let's hope I figured out how to splice these videos together. Have a great weekend. Bye.